A rather unusual attire on the part of Grettler, who I think just hurt himself.
What's up, Internet? This is Jason Heiner, Vice President of ZDNet and Spiceworks. And today on How the Spice Works, we've got a special episode because we're going to turn the camera around. I'm not your usual host. I know you're probably wondering what's going on. Well, that's reason is because we've got the usual host, Jeff Grettler, head brand ambassador of Spiceworks, and we're turning the camera on him because his story is pretty awesome, pretty amazing. For those of you in the Spiceworks community, you know Jeff, but we'd like to get to know a little more about Jeff, and you're going to learn some stuff today that you had no idea about, and you're going to be pretty excited to hear it. So Jeff, thanks for doing this. Excited for you and I to get into it.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, Jeff Grettler, head brand ambassador at Spiceworks. I feel a little nervous sitting on this side of the couch. It's like, this is interesting. I was like, what is it about being on this side that makes it feel a little different?
Yeah. Well, anytime the camera's on, you're the man. You're always ready, and it's always fun to just talk about a lot of things. And I know I'm going to learn a lot, but I can't wait for the people in the Spiceworks community who have known you for a long time, over a decade, to get to know some of the good stuff. And so would love to dive into it. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it. Sometimes I wake up and I'm like, that's new. So I learned something else new every day about myself too. So I'm looking forward to sharing with our awesome community.
It's good. It's a good way to live. All right, Jeff. So let's do it. One of the things I want to know, because you're such a a tech head, like you live and breathe this stuff and know so much about so much. And obviously you and I have both worked in IT, and we know everybody thinks you know everything about tech, which is of course impossible and not, but you do know a lot, and you have had a great run in tech and a great run with the Spiceworks brand. But I'd like to go back even a little bit further about where did you even first get interested in tech? Because you sort of came up in what sometimes we think of today as like the golden age of tech, right? In the 80s, that's when you first got your start. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, it's kind of interesting because, the whole story is just, I had a career trajectory that I thought I was going to do, and I did do, and we'll get into that in a little while. But like, it goes back to both of my grandparents, both of my grandfathers were both licensed electricians. One in Puerto Rico and one actually in the Bronx. He was part of the union. He always did it. So I think it was always going to happen. I actually have a funny story. My first memory of troubleshooting is I was probably like 7 years old, and I had watched my grandfather. He had this shop in Puerto Rico where he just he'd be working on his stuff. The music would blaring, and he had the soldering iron. He had all this stuff going, and I watched him repair a cord, right? Which is easy, right? You just take two pieces of copper, twist it together, and put the tape on it. It's like, okay, the cord is repaired. So being 7 years old, like, oh, I know how to do that now. What I didn't know is you're not supposed to have it plugged in. So I have a very distinct memory of just like, I saw the cord had broke and it fell. And I'm like, oh, I saw how he fixed this. The tape just came loose. So what I'll do is I'll put it together and I'll get some tape. So I run up and I get some tape, pick up the two copper, and I was like, now I got to put the copper together. Bam!
Little jolt.
That was my first jolt into troubleshooting in IT. It's just like, okay, Always make sure the smoke stays in the machine and you don't touch the electrical wires together. That was my very first, and I must have been probably like 6, 7 years old, but it was definitely, that stayed in long-term memory.
That's, it's really funny, Jeff. I didn't know that, obviously, which is fun and cool. But I also, so my grandfather was an electrical engineer and an electrician, and it was in the Navy in World War II and learned a bunch about electronics there, and then went to night school after that. But his father-in-law, so my grandmother's father in Pennsylvania, rural Pennsylvania, he was electronics tinkerer. And so that's how he sort of ended up interested in my grandmother's. He would go over, he had this sort of, garage workshop where he was doing all kinds of electrical stuff all the time. So it's funny. And then my grandfather, when I got my first house, like the wiring was just like a mess. It was like a 100-year-old house. And so I got to spend a lot of time with him rewiring my house essentially, and got a few bites of my own from different wires. So I know the experience well.
Yeah,
And,
that's exactly it, right? There were no schools there. There were usually garages, and your grandfather's shops is where you learned to do that. And that's where my mom learned how to do it, and then she passed a lot of that stuff along to me. So they'd come home and like, we got a new cable box. We got a new VCR. They wouldn't ask anyone else. They'd just hand it to me. Like, there's no question. I had to figure out how to do it and get to do it. And that's kind of how I got my start into just like, oh, technology. This is kind of cool. We were very much into the tech. Like, we talked about this a little bit in the podcast that I did with Josh. It was just like, I was around for the beta versus VHS wars, the Atari versus the Intellivision war. Like, anytime there was a new piece of tech, the tech made it into our house somehow for people to play. Intellivision used to have something called IntelliVoice, which was a big deal. The game actually talked to you, but then they had IntelliComputer. And my uncle, obviously his dad brought him into the trade, and he used to worked for Grumman. So he did a lot of electronic stuff there. So he was like showing me all this stuff like, oh, this is programming, and a lot of if and statements. And I was just like, that again, all stuck in the long-term memory. I had no idea. I thought I had a plan what I was going to do. And that happened for a little while, but every time I got out, they pulled me back in.
It's funny. It's kind of similar to me with the tech stuff, always having tech stuff around too. I had an uncle who was a chemical engineer who worked for DuPont. And so my grandfather, one of his kids, and I remember him bringing Pong home. Like we were staying with him. Pong. And he brought Pong, and like all it did, right, was just a dot and two lines going back and forth. But we just for hours we would play Pong, on that thing, and we thought that was like the first one of the first like consumer grade arcade machines, or you could have on your TV, which is super cool.
If you were a time travel, that was definitely one of those pivotal moments in the history of electronics. Was Pong on the TV, and just had the dial and one box in there, and that's all you can play. Eventually they did Breakout, where they just took the paddle and put it at the bottom, and then you had to break the wall. I remember doing that for hours too. Yeah. So I feel like we always, again, our destiny was always waiting for us to catch up.
It's true. For the kids these days, Pong that was our Nintendo Switch back then.
Right, exactly. Switch 2 coming soon, but yeah, exactly.
Very cool. So now, Jeff, when you went to school, you decided not to go into tech right out of school, though. You took a little bit of a different route and had some fun in a different way. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I did. So you would have thought, again, that with everything that I did going into school, you would have thought I had a path. But I had a funny story with my guidance counselor when it was just getting ready to pick colleges out, right? And this was like my senior year. She had all these, pamphlets and stuff like, oh, you can do this. And I was like, you can put all that away. I'm going to be a professional wrestler. And she looked at me for like a 10-second beat, and she saw the look in my face that there was no questions asked. She's like, all right, good luck with that. That was it. The meeting was like 5 minutes in. It was just like no picking a college, no selecting a career. It's like, this guy's already going to do it. And then funny story, like a year later, I was on the ring crew going back to my high school, and I ran into my gym coach. He's like, did you really run away and join the circus? What are you doing? You're with these guys now? So yeah, that was it. I was like professional wrestling, like right out of high school. I found in the back of a magazine, somebody training, which was in Houston, Texas. By then I'd already left New York and went to Houston, found somebody to train me. And then I was off to the races, man.
Wow. So
first match at 19 years old, I was in the ring pretending to wrestle fight guys in my underwear. At 19, it's like you can't get those kind of life reps anywhere else.
That's right. Oh man, that's amazing. So, did you wrestle in high school? What made you think you did? Okay.
Yeah, I did the Greco-Roman wrestling. Just like the amateur wrestling. I did that for a year.
Okay.
But just to tell you, Jason, I mean, there was 4 boys. I have 3 brothers. So like when I say wrestling started way before high school, my brother used to make us wrestle each other for trophies and stuff, and everybody on the block. And we had the fake ring set up and back. So we were doing that the whole time. and then when I did it
Nice.
in high school, I was just like, there's something missing. And then I realized, oh, because you like the theatrics of the wrestling, not the actual grappling part. But when the funny thing is, when they train you, you don't just go in and say, okay, now it's different. But back then it was still a very protected secret, which they called kayfabe, just like, so when you were training, they didn't tell you that like, this is going to be worked. This is going to be, predetermined ending. So you would just have to go in there an amateur wrestler for like hours, right? And you would just go in there and just like, okay, just try to get him to his back. So you're just sitting there and it's a sweaty warehouse, no AC, and you're just wrestling these guys. And like, there's like no punching, no kicking. You just had to try to get him. So it's just like you did with your brother. And it was just like exhausting. Guys would like run out the back and throw up because you didn't realize when there's just something about when you're expending that type of energy that quick, that fast, you run out of gas fast. In wrestling, they call it blowing up, right? That you're looking for like when you blow up, like there's nothing you can do. Most people would just kind of go limp. But I was just so determined to do it. Like I wasn't the strongest, I wasn't the biggest, but I was going to be the one that I was not going to be outworked. So we did that for weeks. And then when they see that you're really determined to do this, then they're like, okay, let's learn to work together, what they call getting hit really hard in safe places. I'm going to show you how to fall. I'm going to show you how to work together with the person because there was no scripts. Now there might have scripts. Back then there was no scripts. It was more as, I'm going to tell you how this match is going to finish. You guys figure out the rest. And usually it's the veteran that would like feel the crowd because you're telling a story. And you just like, as a kid, you would just like, what they call you a kid when you're wrestling then. As the kid, you just had to listen to me and you follow it all. And usually I was a really good listener because I was just trying to make everything look good. And where we were, somehow that turned into a decade-long career.
Wow, man. So where was this, Jeff? Where was the boot camp you're describing? Like when you signed up, like where was this ad that you saw? This was like a magazine ad or something?
Yeah, exactly. It was a magazine ad in the back of Inside Wrestling. If all you wrestling fans that know, like Bill Apter, before the internet, the only way you knew about wrestling in territories was Pro Wrestling Illustrated, The Wrestler, and Inside Wrestling. Gotcha. So when I was living up north, I thought I was going to go to Killer Kowalski School up in Massachusetts. Okay. But then my parents got divorced. I ended up in Houston. So then I just found an ad there. I went to the show and I'm like, I want to be a part of this. And they're like, at first they're like, whatever. Like, okay, you can be on the ring crew. Go help rip the ring down. So man, and you were just happy to do it. I learned how to, you learn 12 2x12, 6 iron braces and 2 shock absorber springs, a wrestling mat, canvas. I could do it in my sleep, the 3 turnbuckles, and you just do that for a while. They definitely made you earn your stripes before you just jumped in the ring, which maybe now it's different. But back then it was like running away and joining the circus.
Wow, truly. So you did that for a while, breaking down rings and paying your dues. And then sort of you got the opportunity to like, go to the boot camp and see like, could you cut it as one of the kids?
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. You did that for a few weeks and then they make you go in there and grapple for a few weeks. And then they slowly work up to like, if you were, with one certain person eventually, like, okay, I feel confident that you two might be able to have an opening match and this card and you'll be okay. So we're going to give you 10 minutes. You two can figure it out amongst yourselves. And that was it. And it was just like, so it took about 8 months, I think, before I finally had like my first match. Wow. With my best friend to this day was with him. And, we ran the roads together for a long time. But yeah, to this day, awesome. It's very much like band of brothers kind of thing. Like once you're in the road together and stuff, so yeah, it took a while, but yeah, that was it. October of 1991 was my very first match.
Wow, man. All right. So before we go back to tech, we got to do some lightning round stuff on some of the wrestling because the audience is going to want to know some of this. So All right, which league were you in? Which wrestling?
So I mean, I did get to be on Monday Night Raw. So I did get my WWE, which was WWF at the
F
time.
back then. Oh yeah, I remember
Yes.
WWF.
Yep.
Yeah.
For some of you, old time wrestling fans, I did get to wrestle for NWA, National Wrestling Alliance. I wrestled for one of the biggest Mexican promotions at the time, CMLL. I went to Mexico City. We went to Costa Rica.
Wow.
I made an appearance in Puerto Rico too. So I got to, and then
Nice.
I wrestled for Global Wrestling Federation, which was big. It was on ESPN every day at 3 p.m. So like you would find, and
That's awesome.
what they would do is like, I wrestled at the Sportatorium, home of like the Von Erichs, the Freebirds. If you're familiar with them, it's tore down now. But I used to make that trip every Friday night to go to Dallas. We would record a month's worth of TV taping in one night. So sometimes you wrestle like 3 times, and then you would wait, because obviously now I know somebody had to edit all that stuff before it actually showed on ESPN. So back then you'd had to set your VCR to record every day to hopefully that you'd be on there. But yeah, WWE, Monday Night Raw, and Superstars. I wrestled for them probably a dozen times. I did make it to the top, never under contract, but good enough that they would say, he's a good hand. You can bring him in.
Nice. What was your wrestling name when you wrestled?
Yeah. So funny enough. So yeah, it was back then when they were not afraid. Well, the independents were not afraid of copyright infringement. So it was a really popular song called Rico Suave back in that day, because I had like the long hair. I wore like the leather trench coat. I always had a tan. I always wore a gold chain. So they're like, oh, Rico Suave. And like, that's your name. You're from Puerto Rico. You're Rico Suave. So I did that. But when I wrestled in Mexico, I would wrestle as Jason the 13th, which is basically a copyright infringement of Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th.
Sure.
I wore overalls and I wore the hockey mask. Fun fact is, like, if you went to some of those shows, you probably saw me wrestle twice that night, which was twice to pay, once as Rico Suave and then once as Jason the 13th.
Amazing. All right. I was going to ask you what color your, outfits were, but I think you've covered that, right? So what, did you have any?
Every color.
Just every color. Okay.
So fun story. If you go onto Reddit, and there's a whole Reddit post about my wrestling pants.
Your wrestling pants have
my
their
wrestling
own post
gear
on Reddit.
Yeah, it has a whole post on Reddit. Just like everyone's like, here's the result of this match. But did you see this guy's pants? It looked like he ripped his curtains off out of his hotel room and just wrapped it around his waist. Yeah, so that's a fun Easter egg. I wore them at Spice World one year. Just like, but you got to see them to believe them.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. All right. Last one in the lightning round, last part. How about what was your favorite opponent ever in wrestling?
Well, I mean, I would say obviously my first match, because he's my best friend. That's the first one. As far as people know, wrestling The Undertaker was like the highlight for me, because it's just like to get to wrestle The Undertaker, to get choke slammed and tombstoned. He lives here in Austin as well. What a great guy that he is. Wow. And he took care of me. I mean, he was way bigger than me, and he took care of me in what we say in the ring, because he didn't he could have did it whatever he wanted. So I have to say that's the bad part of that story is the match never aired on TV because it got preempted that week.
Wow.
So I don't even have that match on there. There's other matches from WWE, but The Undertaker, all you can see is a highlight reel of him giving me a tombstone. You see the back of my head just hitting the mat. Because I'm like, that looked really good. So they put it in the highlight reel, but I didn't get the match. But obviously that one was like a highlight for me.
That's pretty cool. How about your favorite moment in sort of a decade of wrestling? What was your favorite moment? Maybe that besides those two, The Undertaker and wrestling your best buddy.
I mean, honestly, when it came to wrestling, a lot of the times with the best stuff that happened was all the stuff that happened getting to the match, before the match, and after the match.
Okay.
You can just imagine 6 guys in a van that looks like a Scooby-Doo van driving 3 hours, like when a cop pulls us over, or a convenience store stop, or like you go into a Golden Corral buffet and they realize they're going to lose money that day when they see all these giant guys going in there. So those moments are the ones that really stick with me. I mean, always in the ring, it was like a flash, right? Because you turn into this character it happens so fast, and it's like an out of body experience. But those time on the road, you'd spend 10 hours, 12 hours in the car with these guys. You really, I mean, that's why they always say, let me tell you something, brother. It turned into a brotherhood. You can even call a sister a brother, right? A girl could be a brother, because that's just the wrestling slang. I mean, those were my favorite memories.
That's awesome. How about, what did you learn from professional wrestling, Jeff, that has helped your career, that you brought into your career, both in tech and, and now with Spiceworks?
So the funny thing is communication skills. I had no idea it was going to teach you that, but like you were an independent contractor that really had to like negotiate your own matches, get there, get your own pay. Then you actually had to go on the microphone back when there was no scripts and convince all these people to come watch you wrestle or believe in you or want to see you get beat up. So it really was communication skills, because it gave you a level. Like once you roll around in your underwear and you get a wedgie on ESPN, like there's just something changes in your brain that you feel very confident in. You have less fear. Like it should be like a public speaking course, because once you do that, the confidence you get, like, okay, if I can do this, I can do anything.
That's awesome. That's a pull quote right there. Once you get a wedgie on ESPN, your confidence it changes something in your brain. Yeah. I love it. All right. So Jeff, how did you go from professional wrestling in the 90s to tech, as you hit end of 90s and sort of Y2K?
Yeah, it was right around Y2K. So I was doing a move and I was wrestling somebody. He was definitely a younger person, and the business was changing. So I did this move where I dove over the top, and they're supposed to kind of catch you, or at least at the minimum break your fall. And I remember flying over the top rope and him looking at me and immediately changing his mind and running. Oh. And I just remember, and then I just saw a flash. Oh. And then I was just like, and all I remember was somebody in the front row that said, well, that looked real. Oh. And then I realized that I had cracked my radial head there. But at the time, we had no medical benefits. So, of course, if you're not wrestling, you're not making money. And I worked on a moving truck to make extra money. And so my body was the only way I made money. So I just kept taping it up, putting Tiger Balm on it, putting a skateboard elbow pad on it, and kept wrestling. And then the third week, there was somebody, he was probably about 380 pounds, and he hit me with an elbow drop. And you're supposed to kind of brace yourself, but he hit that spot with broken, and I just saw another flash, and like, you really need to go to the emergency room. So I go, so I finally go there, and they're like, yeah, this is broken here, but you see this is 3 weeks worth of you not coming to the emergency room. It continued to crack. So yeah, my arm to this day still didn't bend. So at the time, my brother had just signed up for a school in Tampa, Florida called Tampa Technical Institute. It was like an offset of USF. He's like, well, I'm renting a house. It's just like, while you're healing, why don't you come here? We'll go to the gym. We'll get to live together again, and we'll go to school. And I was like, I don't got money for school. He's just like, well, you just get a loan. That's what I did. So I went in and signed up for the loan. I just said, sure, while I'm healing, I'll just learn a trade. So it was electronics and computer engineering. I was like, sure, of course we can do that. He's like, yeah, that's kind of in our blood. And that was it. And just like, I got my 2-year degree, and then I got a job, and it's just like, wow, this is pretty good money to not get beat up. And I can kind of settle down a little bit. And that was it. What started off as a temporary while you heal turned into, okay, this is your new career now. I never had this moment of just like, I'm going to retire. It just kind of weirdly, naturally happened.
Yeah. So it's true. Like around that time, maybe it's easy to forget. There were a lot of, because tech was becoming everywhere. There was like a computer. Microsoft was on this thing, like a computer on every desk, right?
Exactly.
In every home. And because of that, there just weren't enough people to like hook up and network all the computers and set up all the computers, even just to set up the computers. Companies would order them and they would sit in boxes for weeks because nobody knew how to set them up.
Right. 100% true. Yep.
And so there were all these, sort of tech training, places that were spinning up and training people, getting them certifications and different things. A+ certification, I remember, was big. And
Oh yeah, that was huge.
Network Plus and MCSE, Microsoft Certified Systems
That was my
Engineer.
like right out of the gate. They're like, as soon as you get to school, it's like, go get your MCSE. So I got my MCSE NT4 like right out of the gate.
Nice. And then, you get a job in one of those. And they were so hungry for people at that time. Like you could have no background in tech, go through an 8-week course, pass your certs, and it's like, and you're getting offered, a job for twice as much as you ever made, before in your life, pretty.
That's
quickly.
exactly what happened. It was just like, and I took a job as like, I was just in charge of changing the tape to make sure the backup worked. So I would go in and change it, test it, and do that. And you would do it so fast. And I noticed the help desk guy was kind of underwater. And I'm like, you want me to grab some tickets? Like, I'm just sitting here. I can do that. Yeah. And he's like, absolutely. Take as many tickets as you want. So I just took it as learning reps. I'd go, answer tickets. Next thing you know, you're doing help desk.
Nice. So your first job after doing your training course was what organization was it for? And you said you were switching tapes. The job was to switch the backup tapes.
Yeah, exactly. It was Connecticut Hospital Association there in Wallingford, Connecticut, and it's just like they had a sysadmin and they had a help desk and they had a director of IT, and they just needed, these guys were so busy they had nobody to manage the backups, which obviously HIPAA compliance wasn't even like, it was just starting to really ramp up. They're like, man, you need to verify these backups are working. Like, who's verifying these? Who's changing them? Like, are you just leaving the tape and just overwriting it? And like, we needed somebody that just took care of our backup and recoveries. And that was it. They hired, like, that was my first tech job.
Oh man. I mean, that's amazing. Like, you think about it today, to get a job like that, no experience, did your course, right? And they're like, bring you in, you just have to switch some tapes. We'll train you how to do it. Boom.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It was just like, it was one of those like, well, I guess it was just like totally meant to be, because they needed somebody fast, and I had the schooling, and I showed I was already, because I got my first networking essentials test done within 2 months of working there. Cause I'm like, look, I'm getting my MCSE. I already have this first one scheduled. So they looked at it as just like, okay, we'll just train you. And that's great. we'll pay to get you your MCSE in there, just nice. Come in here and come in there and get the reps. Yeah, it was a great first job. I mean, obviously, because it convinced me, it was just like, I could do this as a career. This is cool.
Yeah. So where did you go from there, Jeff? Did you end up getting hired to do help desk and other stuff while you were still working for them? I did.
Yeah. So eventually I got promoted to like be their sysadmin, and then I did everybody like, once we got past the whole Y2K thing, which was huge then, like once we got past that, you started doing what everybody else in the industry was, just like, how do you get a raise faster? It's like, well, you go get a different job. You almost play these companies against each other. So then I went for a heating and oil company, and I became this sysadmin, and then CHA hired me back and like, we want me to be the land manager. And then I just went and just all of a sudden just start hopping to, all these different jobs. And then I was just like, I was close enough. And then I got a job in Manhattan working for a hedge fund and being their sysadmin stuff. So at that point, I was definitely the quintessential job hopper at that time in my career. Cause I realized if I apply for another job, it's like automatically getting a raise.
Yeah.
So like every 2 years on the dot, I was just like, okay, now I'm going to do this. Now I'm going to do that. I worked with that's how I ended up in different industries, like working for hair products, working for a television station, working for a hedge fund, healthcare, or heating and oil. It's just like, how did you do all these industries? Like, I just was the sysadmin. I don't know what they do.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. It's true. I know a lot of people that did the same thing every year or two. They were hopping because, one, it was how you get more experience, like in different industries, like you said. And it was also, how you continue to, get, unfortunately, the raises at the time, and even still today, it's sometimes the case, although I think the atmosphere is a little different today. But then, your raises oftentimes you're locked in at like 2%. But if you switch jobs, you're looking at, a lot of times 8 to 10%,
Yeah, a big jump. And it was definitely, like you said, it It was common practice at that time. Like I said, I don't know how much it is now, because ironically now I stayed with Spiceworks for 14 years. But
Yes.
before that, like getting to that point, it felt like a rock and roll free for all. Like just keep moving and they'll just keep paying.
Yeah, yeah, because that first, that from 2000, or really from like late 90s, 98, 99 to, 2010, there was such a shortage of tech talent. And so
Yeah.
because of that, you could really jump around and almost kind of name your price sometimes.
Yeah, and like I said, I went for step with my brother. Like I said, I went to school with him. We got our associates together. We got our bachelors together. And somewhere we
Nice.
splintered off the long way, where I kind of went the sysadmin route and he went the network engineer route.
Mm.
And now he works at Cisco because he got so many certifications. Like, why don't you just work for us? And then he's a sales engineer, and now he just does sales. So he has big clients. And I'm like, man,
Yeah.
what a way to start for just like two, bachelors living in a rental house with a hot tub in Florida to where we're at now.
Oh, that's amazing. All right. So Jeff, how did you end up from there to Texas and Spiceworks? And when? Remind us.
Yeah, so it got to the point now where just like I just got my 4-year degree. I got as many certifications from Microsoft, Cisco, Citrix. I got all certed up, and then decided to start a family. So when my son was born, I had this moment of just like, I was in the South a lot and I was in the North a lot. And I was just like, okay, he's one. Where would I want to start his origin story? Do I want him to grow up North or go South? And I always had a fondness for Texas, for obvious reasons, but Austin was really hot at the time. So I'm like, oh man, well, let's just move to Austin,
Yeah.
let's just so I ended up just like, resigning from my position and feeling confident enough that I'm like, I'm working right behind the Dell. I'm going to have no problem getting a job. I'm just like, pack up and just move. So just came back to Austin. Well, not back to Austin, back to Texas, but Austin, just because again, it was at that time, like 98 was like really like when the secret was out about Austin. And this was around 2004.
Okay.
So, and obviously I'm a big movie nerd, and there were so many movies with Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez filming in Austin, and the Alamo Drafthouse was just ramping up, the music scene here. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is where if I had to do it over, this would be a cool place to grow up. So that was what brought me here, and then brought me into the IT world here in Texas, which is different.
Yeah. So you started working. So you moved to Austin because you wanted to be in Austin, and then you found a job working in tech in Austin.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just kept searching, and I found working for Armstrong McCall, which I think is now Sally Beauty. They needed like a trainer. And then, once you're there and you show all the stuff you can do, like, oh, you can do this, and you just take it all on. And next thing you know, you're running the network kind of thing. So that was great. So yeah, and then I was just, okay, now I'm off and running, doing the same thing that I did up north, but now just a little later in the career. So I wasn't as job hoppy, but.
So how did you end up at Spice? What was your first introduction to Spiceworks? And then how did you end up working at Spiceworks?
So yeah, it was a funny story. So my son was going to a place called Gymboree, which is just like when before school you need something to do, right? So, and of course the parents all start talking and becoming friends with each other. So there was one person there named David Babbitt that was there, and he would just be like, oh, what do you do? It's like, oh, I'm a sysadmin, I'm in IT. And every time he'd ask me, how's your help desk? And it's like, and if you had to do this, he started asking all these questions very specific about my job. And I'm like, why are you always asking such specific questions about my job? Like, do you want to get into IT? He's like, no, I'm one of the original developers for a new startup called Spiceworks that is just starting here in Austin. And it's just like, oh, really? He's like, yeah, it's for IT professionals. Like, you should check it out. So I started looking at it a little bit, like the help desk. This is cool. And then like a month later, it's like, hey, we're hiring for a sysadmin, so I'm going to hand in your resume. I'm like, sure. Like not knowing how any idea I was going to get into, and I was just, next thing you know, it's just like I interviewed and got the job. And there's just like, I was off and running, and it's just like, this place is just like, a playland for IT professionals, because they're like, oh, you're in IT. So at the time, like, I started right around sysadmin day, believe it or not, the very first one. And I was like, I didn't even know this was a holiday. They're like, wait, and the current IT team, they had like cupcakes with their faces on it and all these posters with them. And I'm like, what is this place? What is this holiday? I don't even know I never heard of sysadmin day. And it's just like, I was like, is this like this all the time? And that was it. Then my creative brain started going. It's like, oh, you guys should do this. I was like, have you thought about streaming? And just like, podcasts are going to get big. Do you want to start doing that? And just like start throwing these ideas. And they're like, yeah, do it. Okay, let's do it. Let's try it. And next thing you know, it's like, you're the sysadmin, but you have a live tech show, Control Alt Tech, that you're hosting. And like, how did this happen?
Amazing. I mean, it's really a sign of a good company that they were super experimental and let anybody come up with ideas, and not only come up with ideas, but also like execute on the ideas. That's a sign of a really good like company, a really good culture.
Oh yeah. The four founders were great, and the original CEO, Scott Abel, he was big on fail fast, fail cheap. Just try it. It's just like, don't spend a fortune, but just try it. See if it works. If it doesn't work, just discard it and move on. So he was the experimental. We know, I mean, Google was huge with their experimental that became like paying products. Of course, you just got to try these things. And he was really great. He worked under Steve Jobs for a while, and he took that philosophy as like, let's just try it. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, very cool. So you went to work at Spiceworks as a sysadmin, but you also, how quick was it before you obviously had these ideas and they were getting excited about your ideas, Jeff, no doubt, but how quick was it that they realized, oh, this guy used to be a professional wrestler, like he's got some chutzpah and some personality, so we need to also tap into that too?
It was amazingly quick, because there was a period time there where I was where the internet wasn't as populated, if you will. Sure. And I kind of hid my wrestling background for a while. Like, I didn't really want to talk about it, and just like, I wanted to do this now. But of course, the Spiceworks community, they're going to find out. And then as soon as they found out pretty quickly of just like, oh, you used to do that. And then that was it. So I would say within 6 months, because it was in 2011 I started. When 2011 we had our very first Spiceworks live stream.
Wow.
That we did that. I mean, it was very, very quick.
Wow. It's pretty funny because around this time too, so I used to work for a site called Tech Republic, and we had covered Spiceworks, the software, because Spiceworks was originally an on-prem, free piece of software for for help desk, and sysadmins to manage the devices on your network, basically. Yeah,
everything IT. That's what that was the mothership. Yep, that was it.
Totally. We had covered that. And then we sort of started to get this idea that, oh, this company that created that tool, all of a sudden they've got this community that's developed around it. And like, the community is bigger than the tool. That's like the really amazing thing. And when I was at Tech Republic, I had pitched that we go and try to acquire Spiceworks, because Tech Republic was a community, and we had done some things with it was the biggest IT community from like 2000 to 2005. Tech Republic was the largest IT community.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
But it was starting to lose momentum from some self-inflicted wounds that we won't go into, of like basically not doing some smart things, not listening to the community, but thinking we were really smart and we're going to do things a certain way. And, one of the things I proposed to help get the mojo back in community was that we buy Spiceworks, because I was like, wow, they're doing it right. They know they've got it down, and the community is so constructive, so positive. And that never happened, of course. But so for me, it's a little bit full circle too, like coming when ZDNet getting bought by Ziff Davis, which is also ZDNet, like coming back home to Ziff. And then for me, when I got here, getting the chance to work with Spiceworks. So it's pretty cool, the full circle.
The time is a flat circle. Yeah, I guess. And we were, again, we talked about it earlier, the whole Oedipus of just like, sometimes you find your destiny by trying to avoid it. It seems
Yes.
like you're still going to end up exactly where you're supposed to be. And look, here we,
Wow.
here we both
Wow.
are.
Here we are. Here we are. So one more thing before we talk a little about where we're going with Spiceworks today, because it's exciting, pretty exciting stuff. But you, in addition to you getting some airtime almost immediately when you land at Spiceworks, you also wrote and produced a movie in 2010 as well, right? So you also had an interest in still some of the, arts and theater and drama and production and all of this stuff. So this goes back a ways as well, which is going to, when we talk to your, new role today, is going to come in, very timely too.
Yeah, it was right between another startup that I had done and Spiceworks. I had this like gap of time, and you still like the part of wrestling that you enjoyed was not only just the physicality, it was just like you learned the TV production, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you saw the ESPN guys doing their thing, and I was always kind of fascinated by that. It was just like they were the way they had to capture all this and tell a story. And we had other few wrestlers, one of the guys I used to run the roads with, I mean, he's big. He's been in all three Deadpools. He's been in Harold and Kumar. You've seen him in a ton of movies, and he's just like, well, I'm doing acting. And I'm like, well, I can write you a movie. And it's just like, what? Like, yeah, I'll write you a screenplay. So me and my buddy, we got to, my old tag partner, and just like we got together, we wrote the movie. He's like, well, now you're filming. It's like, well, we can just film it. I wrote it for one location. It's like we had no idea that we created a weird kind of filming camp, but it just, again, the excitement came so infectious. And next thing you know, we're at the Hawaii International Film Festival accepting an award for this thing that we just like, I think we can do this.
Wow. What was the movie called, Jeff?
So it's called For Whom He Tolls. But the funny thing is, kind of like my Undertaker match, that was when the DVD industry, which at that time pretty much collapsed.
Yeah.
Like back then, actors were like, you need a face for the box, and Blockbuster was not the DVD industry as far as selling them, as far as distribution, like getting your movie into Blockbuster was like the goal, right? And how many discs you can make. So then like we were right between that whole getting on disc and streaming. So it never got full distribution. Like it aired in Houston, it aired in Hawaii, it aired in Shreveport, Louisiana, where we shot it, and then in LA. So we got 4 screenings. I still got the movie stub. So it got to show on the screen, but we never made the transfer to digital. And now like there's so much time has passed and rights and stuff. It makes it really clunky to try to even figure out how we could ever get it to air.
Gotcha. But you learned a lot from that experience for sure.
We learned a ton from that. And again, the whole fascination with directing and editing and all that stuff, we kind of like fell in, like that was another foray, like, okay, maybe this is a route too.
Yeah. See, so I love this. We're going to bring this all together in a minute when we talk about, your new role. But before we do that, I want to talk a second about Spice World, because Spiceworks had another one of Spiceworks' great assets is Spice World. When you can bring thousands of IT professionals together, and they will come. Not only do you have a brand that's powerful enough for all of these, millions of people, 30 million a month to come and visit, but when you have thousands of people that will come to an event live, like that says a lot. And Spice World spun up, pretty quickly, but you got involved with that, very soon after it got going. At what point did they tap you on the shoulder and say, you know what, Jeff, we'd like you to like MC the whole event?
So it actually happened, again, another one relatively quickly, because at, my first 2 Spice Worlds, which were at the AT&T Conference Center where we are now, it was strictly in like the IT capacity, but I did get pulled into like, hey, can you do a demo on how to run reports in the on-prem app? And I'm like, yeah, I can do that. And then my boss, Chris Bush, over the time's like, oh yeah, I'm doing a session introducing the community to all the IT pros that work for me. So I ended up on stage then, and I was like, so that was the first time like on stage of just like, okay, doing it. But then fast forward to that third Spice World when we moved to the Austin Convention Center. By that time, we had already launched Control Alt Tech. The IT Pro web show, for those who know. That we were doing that. Like, we had Eli, the computer guy, and he's like, this is more like being on SNL than it is being at an IT company. Like, yeah, because we do we do a lot of videos that we do. IT Ambush was born from Control Alt Tech. We had an IT update, which was it was like our weekend update. So it was kind of fun. So then Spice World rolled around like, hey, why don't you do this live? So then we got to do that live on stage, and it was,
nice.
it was
infotainment, right? Like that was always your brand.
Yeah,
right?
I love infotainment, man. That's the best way to, the spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, right? That was just like great. Like, oh, that went really well. And we did that on like the main stage. Like, can you go do it at Spice World London? And I was like, sure, we can do that. So that became the traveling show. And then as like my jobs changed and roles changed and stuff, and it's like the company was a little bit like a bit of a roller coaster too, right? Of just like, as all startups are. So then they're like, okay, well, you don't have that show, but like, do you want to host the show with Chelsea? And I'm like, what do you mean host the show? It's like, we need somebody to come out and, set everything up. And they always put you in the movie anyway. And I'm like, sure, we'll just do that. And so all the blockbuster movies usually ended with whatever IT pros were ever in it would come onto the stage. So it happened there. So, I mean, I felt like my Spice World and Spiceworks presence was like in lockstep. Because like I said, I started in like July, and that was my first Spice World and sysadmin day within like 3 months. All just collapsed together.
Wow.
So yeah, it was quick. It was pretty quick.
It's amazing. So for years now, up until 2025, for years, you'd kind of been mostly a sysadmin, but like about, 20% of your time or 10% of your time, was also doing some of the media stuff, being on video, hosting Spice World, being involved with that. And then you and I talked at the end of 2024, beginning of 2025 about like, hey, what do we think about you becoming full-time on sort of the content community team, putting all your energy, all the wood behind being full-time on content and working on the brand. And you felt from our first conversation, you and I talking, like, I felt you just had so much passion for this brand, and you're like, look, there's so much more we could do. And I felt the same way, right? Just sort of showing up here and being like, look, I've always wanted to work with this brand. And I know there's so much more we can do. And then we worked it out so that you could come on board full time, and your role changing from, IT director to head brand ambassador. And here we are. And so, why don't you talk a little bit about that, Jeff? That, to me, I was just thrilled that that you wanted to do it, thrilled that we could work it out so that we could, shift your role to that full time. And, I mean, we're off to the races now. We're already, off and running, and we got a lot more to do. But, would love to hear, your perspective. I'm sure the community would love to hear it too, about what it means for you, changing your role to full-time, working on video and going out to events and meeting the, community at meetups and other events and stuff as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely, it was the final aha moment, because like you said, it's been the side hustle since I very first started here, right? It was just always getting pulled in, but there was always that just like, well, remember, you still have a job to do, right? And rightfully so, there is a job that you got hired for, but I was always, whether it was wrestling and decided, I know I'm going to be a wrestler, but they need help setting up the ring. So I was always just like, if sales wanted to, talk to me about something, or if marketing needed, I'm not going to say no, because again, it's just for the good of the company. So I feel like, yeah, of course, I have an opportunity to actually be a revenue driver in the IT department, which is rare, right? We're always a cost center. I'm like, let us do this. So, but it was always just like, well, we like the idea of just like, he's still our actual IT pro. But like, now fast forward, and I've been in this career for, 25 years in IT, and there's a new guard coming up too. And I'm just like, I didn't want to be the person that just kind of held tight on like these roles that I'm doing, when I can do this and offer more to the company. And it just happens to be, at the time that, CNET and ZDNet comes back on board. And I, obviously I'm very familiar with CNET and ZDNet. And I'm just like, and I saw that you were going to be, running a lot of the stuff here. And it was like, you can only, when people return from the moon, there's a small window that you can shoot through safely. And I felt like, you know what, after all this time of me just telling people, you should do this. I'm always telling the video department, do this, but I can never do it because I got to go home and do my job. Yeah. And I was like, what if I'm the actually person, instead of saying, you do this, what if it's just like, I'm going to do this? This is stuff I'm not doing this for. Of course I enjoy it, but this is going to be so beneficial for the company. The scales tipped, and it felt like I can do better for Spiceworks and the community in this role than I can just continuing to, be the director of IT, right? I feel like we have a great, tech staff that can do that, a lot of that stuff. And I'm like, but I can do this. Yeah. So why don't I do this instead and let them then do their job and make this their job? And I remember just sitting here. It's like, I'm going to set a meeting with Jason and I'm just going to talk to him. And I'm going to just lay out like sorry if this is like a fire hose when you ask for a glass of water. Like, here's all the things that I've wanted to do for this time at Spiceworks. I want to bring this back. We just launched our podcast platforms again across all platforms. I was just like, there's a lot of like low fruit, no brainers. Let's do this. And now I just like, it all came full circle. Like, I can communicate with people at trade shows because I did that at wrestling. I can edit and learn how to shoot because I did that with my movie. And I can technically help people with the technology because that was my career. So 2025, weirdly enough, it all just came together.
Yeah. Yeah, you seized the opportunity. And look, I'm so glad that you did, because look, there's a lot of people out there who can do IT really well, but there's like a small number that have there's so few people that have the love and passion for the brand, the Spiceworks brand that you do. And then this other mix of skills you have of like just loving people, working with people, meeting new people, and like doing video, being able to go to meetups and get people excited about, all the things that they can do and what this community can help them do. And because of your background as an IT pro, you can also talk to them peer to peer and talk to them about what it means and how Spiceworks, every day is trying to help them. We know it's a hard job and can be thankless sometimes. It can be humorless sometimes. And we try to bring a little bit of the humor and a little bit of the gratitude to everybody that's out there doing it, So, I mean, I'm just thrilled that you are doing this role and that you wanted to do it. You pitched it to me as the easiest pitch I ever had to greenlight, and then I had to do all the stuff on the back end to get it to work. But that was, that part was, I also know how to do. So I'm thrilled that we worked it out, Jeff. And look, the cool thing is you've already started going to, you went to RSA, you just got back from there. You did a bunch of interviews, a bunch of videos. So you got more of that coming. There'll be more of that. But maybe you could talk a little about some of the other stuff that, we're planning to do, give the audience a little taste of that, from bringing back a little bit of Spice Core to, other kinds of things that, you're going to be working on.
Well, like I was telling you, I'm like, would you like a glass of water? And I hit you with the fire hose. And sometimes I think I gave you and Sean the disclaimer of just like, bear with me as I just, blast all these ideas at you. There's so much I want to bring back. Obviously, Control Alt Tech. I have the sign right here. It's very near and dear to my heart because I just feel like we were almost ahead of our time.
Sure.
So, and again, everything that I'm talking about doing here is not just for me. Like, I don't mind being like the voice of it, but this is all just about highlighting everybody in our community. We have such a unique culture in our community that I feel like this needs to be seen, heard in any way, shape, or form. So Control Tech, the best part was we'd have 3 IT pros that would come in here, come here live. Then we turned into on the air. We'd have that. It was like having Spice World every other week. So I'm looking forward to bringing back some live element shows. Like, we've been testing the waters with some, recorded shows, and the watch party. We just did a watch party with Rich, was great. And I'm like, this is it, the tip of the iceberg, getting our podcast fit, going again, right? We were ahead of the curve on that too. bringing back again, this is all stuff that are just great assets to highlight our community. And, making Spice World, which is everybody, we shifted it this previous year in 2024 to be something a little different. And it was very well received and very, very excited that it's just like, wow, let's just keep now taking what you love about Spice World and making it a little different with some live events and live experiences, if you will, like a museum and, the future of IT and getting ZDNet and CNET and PC Mag and Mashable, you leveraging all this stuff to not only, highlight our community, but highlight our company, right?
Yeah.
It's weird that it almost feels like a startup again. I tell people that all again. When I was walking around RSA and people just thought when we weren't doing on-prem anymore, that the company was gone. I was just like, what are you talking about? It's just like, we'll get millions of, people coming in and out of Spiceworks all the time. We're stronger than we're coming up on our 20-year anniversary of this company. Sure, we got beat up, but like Rocky's just like, I didn't hear no bell. Right? What are you talking about? We're not going anywhere.
Yes.
It's just like, and I'm very passionate. I was with this company at a very formative time in my adult years of moving on to the new act of my company. So I take this community very seriously and personally, but also fun, where it's not so serious that I can't, enjoy it. I enjoy it so much. And I'm like, you don't want the party to end. So I want all these, again, I'm going to be reaching out to the community of just like, hey, send me a video about this and I'm going to make an asset. Like, I'm going to highlight everybody I can. I'm going to put out a call for just like record something. Cause now we live in a TikTok, YouTube, short Instagram reel. It's just like, I want to highlight a lot of people in the community. We're talking about, let's see your home labs, let's bring some of these posts like wrong answers to only, let's bring the video life. There's just so much we can do. And I've been talking with our vendors and they're like, yes, let's do this. Like they're ready to go too. So I'm super excited about where Spiceworks is heading because again, the high tide raises all boats, and there's other portions of the company that are going to benefit if we can really, really put a nice shine on our community.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Jeff, we're so lucky to have you. I mean, and Spiceworks, you are like the embodiment of the audience, also the embodiment of, I think, of the company, and carrying forward a lot of the best of kind of what we always have both treasured about this brand. You have this great history with it. You understand the community. You and Sean and some other others that have been here for a long time. Also, just want to be here, want to succeed, and want to see us still be around and still do great things and continue to do new things to help the audience succeed. That's one of the things that'll always keep this brand, moving forward and fresh. And so love it, love that, you have this new role and you're, leading Spiceworks into a lot of times, we talk around the company now, we're building the Spiceworks of the next decade in 2025.
Yes.
And you and your role is playing a big part of that. And I'm thrilled to be here and be a part of it. We've talked about, it's kind of full circle for me. I feel like a kid in a candy store, being part of it and really excited for what's to come. So thanks for letting me sit in your chair and turn the camera around on you for this one. This was a lot of fun, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. And we're lucky to have you. It felt like, we had that Blues Brothers moment of getting the band back together when we realized that we kind of had you at the helm that kind of gets it and understands, it was just like you said, it was a timing and a very unique opportunity. So thank you for giving us the shot again to Spiceworks TV, Spiceworks Radio, Spiceworks all over the internet, Spiceworks on billboards. That's where we're going.
Yeah. It's going to be exciting times ahead. All right. Yeah. Thank you, my friend. Talk soon.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to hand you my line and let you say it because I end every show with a certain line. I'm going to let you take it, but I'll say it, but then you can spray it. Ready?
All right.
So I always end it with, don't forget to tech yourself before you wreck yourself. So I got to let you take that line and do the honors in the host chair.
All right. Well, so as Jeff always says, don't forget to tech yourself before you wreck yourself. All right. Thank you, Internet. See you next time.
Grettler has not been nominated for Best Threads at the Slammings. No, he has not.